Could you actually, to be honest, imagine how terrible it would be if drawing was just memorizing a series of lines? You'd only be able to draw only a few things, and by and large, the people who actually believe that drawing is just memorizing where the lines go, those are the people who can only draw a few things. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to the Teach Me to Draw series. Now, in this series, I'm sure I've said a number of things repetitively that I'm sure has kind of annoyed people, and had people asking the question, well, what does that even mean to begin with? Such as,
drawing is more than learning where the lines go.
In this video, I'm going to try to visually define what that means, because in order to teach you, it goes kind of beyond words. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words and such like that. Now, take a look at this line here, for example. This is one of the reasons why drawing is more than learning where the lines go. This line right here that I'm making right here on the screen right now, you're not always going to be able to see that. Even when you're looking at it straight on from a very similar view, you're not always going to draw that line in that specific location. It's really important that people are able to understand that objects are three-dimensional objects. Visualizing objects as being three-dimensional objects. The things that you're drawing, you need to visualize them as three-dimensional objects. For example, I've seen enough pliers, I've drawn enough different things that I'm able to look at this pair of pliers from this angle, and I'm able to draw a portion of it, or even the entire thing, from a completely different angle. The best way to be able to do that is, you can go ahead and take a bunch of pictures of a reference from a bunch of different angles, and draw from all of those reference images of the exact same object. And that will really help you be able to picture things in 3 dimensions. Now, the next thing that I go ahead and tackle is something called proportion. A lot of people confuse proportion with anatomy, and they can go hand in hand, but there is no real anatomy to a pair of pliers. I guess there's mechanics to a pair of pliers, but there's not really anatomy. So I picked the head of the pair of pliers, and I went ahead and copied, pasted it, and you can see that there's 2 pastings. I pasted 2 heads of this pair of pliers there. So this pair of pliers is a total of 2 3/4 heads long, okay? And then I go ahead and simplify the shape into 2 squares, a small square and a big square. And as long as I'm able to draw these 2 squares somewhat similar to the exact same shape as the reference, I'm able to kind of get it down. And being able to kind of compartmentalize your reference into these squares kind of gets you to be able to see what is the negative space in relationship to the positive space within that square. And if you need to split it up into smaller squares, then go ahead and do that. Now, some people, they get really technical with this square reference technique. Some people like to do a bunch of exact measurements and such like that. I don't do exact measurements. I'd much rather just kind of eyeball it. As long as there's enough of a well-crafted image in the end and people are able to see that is a really good drawing of a pair of pliers, then I'm happy with that. Now, this series is called the Teach Me to Draw series, so some people may get frustrated that a lot of this series resembles a speed painting series of videos. But the voiceover is pretty key because I'm talking about the concepts that you have to have absorbed in your mind in order to be a decent artist. And I am dissecting my workflow verbally to let you guys know exactly what it is that I'm doing. Now, here I'm doing things that I wouldn't be able to normally get away with, because if I was working with pencil and paper, I'd have to redraw this stuff. But with digital stuff, I'm able to just kind of select things, transform things, warp things, and stuff like that. Now, here I slowed down the video to kind of demonstrate something that I was kind of discussing earlier. A lot of artists, if they can't seem to understand what's going on in their reference image, which especially happens with artists that are just starting out or have difficulty leveling up, what they'll do is they'll split up the image into a bunch of little tiny squares, and then they'll go to their drawing and they'll split it up into a bunch of squares, and then they'll treat each little square as if it's a separate piece of paper, and they'll just go ahead and just make sure that the proportions of each and every single detail is perfect in that little square. And if you're able to do that with every single square, your overall image will look just like the reference image. Now, for me personally, I'd rather keep my artistic flair and my artist's intuition and my style. But when you're just starting out, if you're using the square method, I would highly recommend that. I would say go for it. Do it 100%, because it's very difficult to recognize what it is that you're seeing. There's things that your brain just assumes, that your brain normally doesn't tell you about the objects that you use, hold, and see every single day. And being able to just kind of dissect your reference, even if it's just through tiny square after tiny square, is something that is invaluable to an artist. And as time develops, you'll find that you'll be able to replicate what it is that you're seeing with bigger and bigger squares until you don't even need them necessarily anymore. But also a little bit more about the Teach Me to Draw series, okay? Since it's resembling a speed painting series of videos. The things that I'm drawing, I would normally not draw these things because I've already drawn these sorts of things a billion times. So I'm drawing these things for your benefit. I don't actually want to draw a pair of pliers. But if I were to normally draw a pair of pliers, I'd do something like the Draw from Everything video inside of this series. But the reason why I'm drawing them like this is primarily so that I could demonstrate a point, and I'm not quite at that point right now. So just continue watching and you'll see what my point is here. Now, earlier I mentioned that your brain just makes assumptions out of the objects that you see every single day, the things that you use every single day. Now, there's going to come up a point really close here where I slow down the video just a little bit so you can go ahead and see me studying the reference just a little bit so I could recognize what it is that I'm actually seeing rather than trying to assume. Now, here you can see my assumption. Right here, and then I go up at the reference and I see, oh no, it extrudes there. The wire cutter section extrudes right there. That's just one small thing that I didn't notice about the reference. Not only that, but the wire cutters on the top of the head and everything, I didn't really notice, hey, that's in perspective. I need to draw out the other faces that are going away from me. So you need to be able to kind of study that sort of thing. Now, here is where I'm starting to make my point here. You can see me starting to draw out the same pair of pliers from a different angle. And this shape for this handle was originally this shape, whereas, you know, there's a similar shape right there. There's a similar set of lines right there in this new dissection of the sketch, but it's not quite the same. So when people come over to me and say,
how do I draw a pair of pliers? Or how do I draw a hand?
Or something along those lines, how do you even answer that question?
Well, where do the lines go?
What do you mean? The lines are different. Even the lines that are the same are different. Especially with something that deals with anatomy, like human anatomy or something like that, the lines get immensely different, specifically because the way the muscles wrap around, and I'll get into that in this video. Just continue watching. I'll get into talking about anatomy just a little bit, and why it's not just memorizing
where the lines go.
Okay? Now, you can see that I dissected the sketch, and I actually dedicated myself to actually doing a loyal drawing of this pair of pliers from this other angle. These are the sorts of things that you should be doing when you're first starting out and drawing, and it should be instilled as this habit. Now, whether or not you do it this way and then progress towards making it into a spaceship or something from your imagination, go ahead and do that. That's cool. But as long as you draw an image that is loyal to the reference, just like how I did in the Draw from Everything video, and just as how I'm doing it right now. Draw a loyal image and then go ahead and adjust the image to fit your imagination and such like that. So inside of the Draw from Everything video, I said if there's a reference that really scares you, that really intimidates you quite a bit, then
good.
That's where you're going to learn. Well, the reason why I said that is because I remember trying to draw from references that are extremely difficult, that were way above my skill level. And after attempting to draw them, I inevitably failed, and it frustrated me. It made me feel like a failure, and ultimately I learned the most from those failures, because it showed me that there was something very fundamental about reality that I didn't understand. And even though I couldn't necessarily describe what it was that I wasn't understanding, I knew that there was something there that I wasn't understanding. And after the course of months of looking at my picture versus the reference image, eventually I wound up seeing what the problems were with my version of that exact same image. Not only that, but it's really helpful to at least know some sort of artistic friend or something, so that they can take a look at your artwork and they can go ahead and give you a critique. Of course, you have to be open to the critique, and just being open to a critique isn't just being able to gracefully listen and such like that. You at least have to be willing to attempt to do what it is that they're describing. I think that some of the most misleading advice that experienced artists have for people who are just beginning in the art world, or people struggling to reach the next level in their artwork, is
just practice every single day. Just a little bit. At least practice, just draw every day. Draw as often as possible.
That doesn't help if what you're drawing is the same thing every single time you draw. I mean, even if it's just a different character and you just draw the same thing every single time. The same pose, the same camera angle, every single time. If it's always the same thing, then you're practicing wrong. You're just cementing really bad habits. You're not going to learn anything that way. You have to draw from references, pure and simple. Now here you can see the exact same object from two different angles. Even the lines that are the same from one picture to the other, they're drawn differently. The shape of them is different. And then there's a whole bunch of new lines introduced depending on which angle that you're looking at. Okay, so this image came from the book Anatomy for Sculptors. And so I'm going to use a few images from this particular book here. And I am allowed to do that through copyright law. I am protected because I am teaching, and it's different than what the book was teaching on the page that I took in order to give you guys these images. And I'm going to demonstrate why it's more than just learning where the lines go. Let's say you drew out an arm like this, and then you figured out where the lines go. And you decide, okay, now in your drawing though, you're going to change the pose of the hand. And so you go ahead and you draw out a different pose for the hand. And then in your next image, you go ahead and decide, oh, but I want to change the pose now. I know where the lines go with this. So I'm going to, in my next picture, I'm going to move the arm and bend it and such. And, you know, it just doesn't seem to come out right. And you try to connect it to the torso and it just doesn't look right. And you wonder why. Well, this is why. I mean, just take a look at this. Like, I'm drawing out the same muscles at different angles, and the lines are different. They're completely different. The deltoid, it's completely different throughout the entire course of the image. The bicep, it's sometimes less visible or completely non-visible. I mean, just look at it. It's completely different. So hopefully this video detailed exactly what I mean by
drawing is more than just memorizing where the lines go.
And could you actually, to be honest, imagine how terrible it would be if drawing was just memorizing a series of lines? You'd only be able to draw only a few things. And by and large, the people who actually believe that drawing is just memorizing where the lines go, those are the people who can only draw a few things. If drawing was just memorizing where the lines go, you'd have to memorize thousands of different lines for thousands of different types of objects. But no, it's just a matter of being able to visualize something in three-dimensional space. If you can visualize it, if you can kind of rotate it around and stuff like that, if you can master that, then you're becoming a good artist. And to be honest, this video just showed you how you could learn it. And for the parts of the content that it didn't show, it supplied cards that gave you a link to videos that you could learn more. And that pretty much concludes it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. And if you guys would like to see more content from me, feel free to click on anything that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.